One factory in Indiana produces bourbon for over 50 brands you think are independent craft distilleries. Same building, same fermentation tanks, same copper stills, same barrels, same liquid aging in the same warehouses, different labels, different origin stories, wildly different prices. That bottle you paid $80 for at the liquor store last weekend probably came from MGP Distillery in Lawrenceburg, Indiana. The craft story on the label was written by marketing executives in Manhattan. The heritage recipe your bartender recommended was invented by brand consultants who never operated a still. The family tradition stretching back generations was fabricated in a boardroom 3 years ago. Some of these companies paid millions in lawsuit settlements for fraud. Others hid billion-dollar corporate takeovers while still marketing dead founders. One charges premium prices for whiskey aged 18 months that independent reviewers compare to paint thinner and nail polish remover. The bourbon industry runs on manufactured authenticity. Small batch means nothing legally. Reserve means nothing legally. Craft means nothing legally. Hand-selected means nothing legally. These words exist to justify price tags, not guarantee quality. Premium bourbon pricing has increased over 40% in the past decade. Collectors pay thousands for allocated bottles. Regular drinkers spend $50 to $100 expecting quality that matches the cost. Most of them are buying marketing, not whiskey. 13 bourbon brands have built empires on stories that don't match what's actually in the bottle. This is everything they don't want you to know. High West, Park City, Utah. Ski resort town, the first legal distillery in Utah since 1870. Western aesthetic, mountain heritage, craft bourbon revolution in the Rockies. The story sold millions of bottles. The reality sold differently. High West built its reputation on whiskey it didn't distill. 100% of High West bourbon and rye for years came from MGP in Indiana, not Utah, not anywhere near those Rocky Mountain marketing photos. Industrial distillery output trucked across the country and bottled with Ski Lodge branding. Constellation Brands acquired High West in 2016 for $160 million. That's the corporation behind Corona, Robert Mondavi Wines, and dozens of mass-market alcohol brands. Your craft Utah distillery became a line item on a Fortune 500 balance sheet. The acquisition didn't change the marketing. Mountain imagery stayed, craft positioning stayed, prices increased. High West eventually built actual distilling capacity in Utah, but aged expressions sold today still rely heavily on MGP sourcing. The 10-year, 12-year, and older bottles couldn't possibly come from Utah production that started recently. Premium pricing ranges from $40 to $100. That reflects ski resort marketing budgets, not distilling innovation. Utah craft marketed, Indiana factory bourbon delivered, corporate acquisition buried beneath mountain aesthetic. At least High West eventually started distilling something. The next brand built its entire identity on a state it never distilled in. Templeton Rye. Templeton, Iowa, population 362, a town so small you'd miss it driving through. The marketing claimed this tiny town harbored a Prohibition-era secret. Bootleggers supposedly created a legendary rye recipe in the 1920s. Al Capone himself called it the good stuff. Iowa farmers kept the tradition alive for generations until Templeton Rye finally brought it to the world. Every word was corporate fiction. The 2015 class action lawsuit exposed the entire operation. Templeton paid $2.5 million settling fraud claims. Court documents revealed 100% of Templeton Rye came from MGP in Indiana, not Iowa, not anywhere close to those cornfield marketing photos. The Prohibition heritage story had no historical documentation. Al Capone's supposed endorsement was invented by marketers. The legendary recipe was standard MGP rye available to anyone with a purchase order. Templeton's response to the lawsuit was remarkable. They changed labels from Made in Templeton to Bottled in Templeton and continued selling virtually identical bourbon at identical prices. No apology, no refunds, minimal acknowledgement of years of deliberate deception. Iowa bottles still show Iowa imagery. The website still emphasizes Iowa heritage. The whiskey still comes primarily from Indiana. $2.5 million in lawsuit settlements, zero accountability, premium prices unchanged. Templeton at least got caught and paid consequences. The next brand committed geographic fraud and walked away without paying a dollar. Whistlepig, Vermont farmhouse on every bottle. Rolling green hills, rustic barns, farm-to-bottle rye whiskey crafted in New England tradition. For years, 100% of Whistlepig came from Canada. Founder Raj Bhakta bought aged Canadian rye by the tanker truck, shipped it to his Vermont farm, bottled it in a picturesque barn, sold it as Vermont craft whiskey at $80 to $300 per bottle. The Vermont property existed. The craft distilling did not. Consumer lawsuits in 2015 challenged the geographic deception. Whistlepig's response was quietly changing label language. Bottled in Vermont replaced previous marketing that implied Vermont production. No settlement, no admission, just silent label adjustments and continued sales. Whistlepig eventually built actual distilling capacity in Vermont. Current production includes some Vermont-made whiskey, but those 10-year, 12-year, and 15-year aged expressions on shelves right now could not possibly come from Vermont operations that started recently. The premium aged bottles that collectors hunt are Canadian industrial rye with Vermont labels. Boss Hog releases cost $500 or more, $1,000 for Canadian whiskey with a pig on the bottle, and a story about Vermont craftsmanship. Vermont farm marketed, Canadian bulk whiskey delivered. Premium prices for geographic fiction. Whistle Pig misled consumers about location. The next brand misled consumers about its own founder being alive. Angel's Envy. Lincoln Henderson created Woodford Reserve during his 40 years at Brown-Forman. Master distiller credentials don't get more legitimate. After retirement, he launched Angel's Envy as his personal masterpiece. Port wine barrel finishing. Innovative technique, father-son collaboration with his son Wes. Beautiful story, mostly past tense now. Lincoln Henderson died in 2013. 2 years later, Bacardi acquired Angel's Envy for an undisclosed sum estimated over $150 million. The marketing still features Lincoln Henderson prominently. His photo appears on materials. His legacy gets emphasized in every interview. What doesn't get mentioned is that he's been dead for over a decade and a global spirits conglomerate owns everything. Bacardi executives make production decisions now. Corporate accountants set volume targets. Henderson's vision exists only in marketing copy. The port barrel finishing that made Angel's Envy innovative became a production shortcut under corporate ownership. Port finishing adds sweetness, color, and complexity quickly. Bourbon that would need additional years in standard barrels achieves sellable character in months with port treatment. Former employees reported production pressure increasing after the Bacardi acquisition. Aging times shortened, volume requirements expanded. The craft approach Henderson pioneered became corporate efficiency engineering. Prices increased from around $50 to $60 to $80 or more. Quality reviews declined. Production scaled up. You're buying a dead man's name from a corporation that never met him. Angel's Envy exploits its founder's legacy. The next brand's founder is alive and estranged from his own daughter after discrimination allegations. Bulleit Bourbon, frontier whiskey, Western aesthetic, family heritage dating to the 1830s. Tom Bulleit resurrected his great-great-grandfather's bourbon recipe, American pioneer spirit in every pore. Rugged authenticity you can taste. Then his daughter went public and the Frontier family story collapsed. Hollis Bulleit filed a lawsuit in 2017 alleging LGBT discrimination, hostile work environment, and retaliation for her sexuality. She'd been the public face of Bulleit for years, traveling the country as brand ambassador, appearing at events, representing the family legacy her father built. According to her allegations, Diageo removed her from that role because she's gay. The lawsuit claimed hostile treatment escalated after her sexuality became known within the company. Diageo owns Bulleit. That's the world's largest spirits corporation, controlling Johnnie Walker, Guinness, Don Julio, Tanqueray, and dozens of global brands. Your Frontier family whiskey belongs to a London-based conglomerate worth over $80 billion. The lawsuit settled quietly for undisclosed terms. Diageo admitted nothing, issued a brief corporate statement about valuing diversity. Bulleit marketing continued unchanged, Frontier family values plastered on every bottle while the founder's actual family was publicly destroyed. Tom Bulleit remained brand figurehead. Hollis remained excluded. Industry sources reported father and daughter haven't spoken since the lawsuit. The Frontier family heritage exists only in marketing materials now. The bourbon itself hides another uncomfortable truth. For decades, 100% of Bulleit came from MGP in Indiana. Tom Bulleit wasn't distilling anything. He was buying industrial bourbon by the tanker truck, bottling it, and marketing family heritage that had nothing to do with production. Diageo eventually built a Bulleit distillery in Kentucky. Production capacity exists now. But aged expressions on shelves today still come primarily from MGP sourcing. That 10-year Bulleit couldn't have come from Kentucky facilities that opened recently. Frontier family values marketed, LGBT discrimination allegations settled, Indiana factory bourbon delivered, corporate billions extracted. Bulleit's scandal involved family drama. The next brand scandal involves pure mathematics and proof manipulation. Basil Hayden's elegant bottle, woven label wrapped around the neck, premium shelf placement between top-shelf whiskeys, gift shop favorite at every distillery tour in Kentucky. The bourbon that looks sophisticated enough to impress someone who matters. The sophistication is water, literally. Basil Hayden's is bottled at 80 proof. That's the absolute minimum legal proof for bourbon in America. Federal regulations say you cannot legally bottle anything weaker and still call it bourbon. Basil Hayden's sits exactly at that legal floor. Every barrel produces more bottles when you dilute whiskey to minimum legal proof. Basil Hayden's represents pure profit maximization through water addition. Maximum volume extracted from minimum barrels. Here's what Beam Suntory doesn't advertise. Basil Hayden's uses the identical mash bill as Old Granddad. Same distillery, same recipe, same fermentation, same barrels, same aging warehouses, same juice. Old Granddad bottled in bond costs $25 and comes in at 100 proof. Basil Hayden's costs $45 to $50 at 80 proof. You're paying double for the same whiskey with 20% more water added. Diluting high rye bourbon to 80 proof eliminates the characteristics that make high rye bourbon interesting. The spice gets muted into vague warmth. The complexity disappears into blandness. What remains is expensive water with suggestions of whiskey somewhere in the background. Former Beam employees confirmed in bourbon enthusiast forums that Basil Hayden's exists purely as profit engineering. Take Old Granddad inventory, add water until you hit minimum legal proof, triple the price. Design an elegant bottle that appeals to gift buyers who won't drink it themselves. The target customer doesn't drink bourbon regularly, they're buying gifts for someone else. The elegant presentation convinces non-experts they're purchasing something special. The recipient opens the gift, takes one sip, and immediately knows better. Same bourbon as $25 Old Granddad, 3 times the price. Maximum water dilution legally allowed. Profit margin optimization dressed in sophisticated packaging. Basil Hayden's waters down existing bourbon. The next brand charges premium prices for bourbon it doesn't distill at all. Redemption, high rye bourbon, wheated bourbon, straight rye. Entire product line spanning bourbon categories. Craft positioning, premium pricing, small batch authenticity. Redemption doesn't distill any of it. Zero distilling occurs at Redemption. No fermentation, no distillation, no barrel selection during aging. They purchase finished whiskey from MGP, truck it from Indiana, bottle it with Redemption labels, and sell it at $40 to $50 per bottle. The company is a marketing operation with bottling equipment. That high rye mash bill Redemption markets as distinctive is MGP's standard high rye recipe available to anyone who writes a check. The same juice gets sold as Bullet, as Templeton, as dozens of other craft brands, different labels, different stories, identical liquid from identical barrels. When journalists pressed for sourcing transparency, Redemption quietly acknowledged MGP origins. No public announcement, no label changes, just quiet admission when cornered. Premium pricing for commodity whiskey you can buy cheaper under different labels from the same factory. MGP makes quality bourbon. That's not the criticism. The criticism is pretending Redemption represents craft production when they're pure middlemen marking up Indiana factory output with brand storytelling. Zero actual distilling. 100% purchased whiskey. Premium craft pricing. Redemption at least uses quality MGP whiskey. The next brand charges double for putting that same whiskey on a boat. Jefferson's Ocean. Aged at sea. Barrels loaded onto cargo ships. Crossing oceans for months. Temperature swings from tropical heat to temperate cool. Saltwater air surrounding the wood. Ship motion constantly agitating the whiskey inside. Revolutionary aging innovation impossible to replicate on land. Or complete marketing theater designed to justify doubling the price. Science says theater. Jefferson's Ocean costs $80 to $100 per bottle. Standard Jefferson's costs $40. The only measurable difference is a boat ride and the story it allows. Scientific analysis reveals minimal detectable difference between ocean-aged and land-aged bourbon. Blind taste tests conducted by Whiskey Advocate, independent bloggers, and competition judges repeatedly fail to identify which Jeffersons crossed oceans versus which stayed on land. The romantic marketing claims don't survive basic chemistry. Temperature swings on cargo ships don't exceed temperature variations in Kentucky rickhouses during summer months. Maritime humidity doesn't surpass Kentucky's legendary moisture levels. Ship motion agitates barrels, but so does standard warehouse barrel rotation that every distillery performs. Ocean aging primarily adds shipping costs to the final price. Ship cargo space rental, maritime insurance premiums, loading and unloading labor at multiple ports. Those costs get built into every bottle you purchase, and you're paying for transportation logistics and marketing storytelling, not flavor transformation. Pour Jefferson's Ocean next to standard Jefferson's Reserve. Color is identical amber. Nose delivers the same MGP profile. Flavor profiles mirror each other completely. No saltwater minerality, no unique maritime complexity, no detectable $40 worth of ocean voyage. Jefferson sources bourbon from MGP and other undisclosed distilleries. The base whiskey is identical regardless of whether it travels by truck across Kentucky or cargo ship across the Atlantic. Ocean aging innovation marketed. Boat trip surcharge delivered. Same whiskey, double the price. Jefferson's Ocean charges extra for transportation. The next brand charges extra for a location that has nothing to do with actual production. Widow Jane, Brooklyn, New York. Red Hook neighborhood, industrial chic aesthetic. Urban Craft Distillery, bringing bourbon production to America's largest city. Limestone mineral water sourced from historic Rosendale mines in upstate New York. Terroir-driven bourbon crafted where the Brooklyn Bridge meets the East River. The whiskey came from Indiana. Widow Jane built its entire brand on Brooklyn credibility while sourcing its bourbon from MGP for years. The Red Hook facility existed. The photogenic tasting room welcomed visitors. Actual distilling capacity was minimal to non-existent during the brand's critical growth phase. The Rosendale mineral water story is technically accurate for whiskey they produce themselves. But aged bourbon on shelves during the years that built the brand's reputation came from Indiana limestone country, not New York. Same MGP juice that fills bottles for dozens of other craft brands. Premium pricing reflects Brooklyn real estate costs and urban craft positioning. $60 to $80 per bottle for whiskey you can buy cheaper under various Indiana labels from the same source. Widow Jane expanded actual distilling capacity more recently. Current production includes genuine New York-made whiskey aging in their facilities. But those aged expressions that established the brand and command collector prices came from the same Lawrenceburg factory supplying half the craft bourbon industry. Brooklyn Craft marketed globally. Indiana factory delivered quietly. Urban authenticity manufactured for premium prices. Widow Jane misrepresents its location. The next brand misrepresents its entire production history. Michter's and heritage brand, original American whiskey, distilling tradition since 1753. That's before the Declaration of Independence, before the Revolutionary War, before America existed as a country. Premium quality justifying $50 to $100 price tags for standard expressions and thousands for limited releases. The history is real. The connection to current production is completely fictional. Original Michter's Distillery in Schaefferstown, Pennsylvania, operated for over 2 centuries before closing in 1990. Financial troubles, changing markets, corporate neglect, the distillery shut down. The brand name was eventually purchased at auction by completely different owners with zero connection to original operations. The new owners had no distillery at all. For years after the brand relaunch, 100% of Michter's was sourced whiskey from undisclosed locations, purchased from unnamed distilleries, bottled and sold with heritage marketing emphasizing that 1753 founding date. Michter's eventually built a distillery in Louisville, Kentucky. Actual production capacity exists now, but the aged expressions that command premium prices and collector attention couldn't possibly come from Louisville facilities that opened recently. That 10-year bourbon on the shelf came from somewhere Michter's won't disclose. The 20-year limited release definitely didn't come from Louisville operations. The 25-year celebration sour mash selling for thousands absolutely predates any Michter's production by the current company. When journalists press for sourcing transparency, Michter's emphasizes current Louisville production without addressing where aged stock originates. Deliberate opacity protects premium pricing. 1,753 heritage marketed prominently on every label. 1,990 distillery closure unmentioned. Years of sourced-only production buried. Aged stock origins permanently undisclosed. Michter's hides its production gap. The next brand doesn't even pretend to have a distillery. Burrell Bourbon. Independent bottler, craft curation, small batch selection. Founder Joe Beatrice personally selects exceptional barrels from undisclosed sources and bottles them without chill filtration at cask strength. Translation, purchasing agent with good taste and premium pricing. Barrel doesn't distill anything. They buy barrels from various distilleries, mostly MGP and Tennessee producers, and bottle them under the Barrel label. Batch releases cost $60 to $90. Limited editions exceed $100. The selection process is genuinely skilled. Beatrice has a refined palate. Individual batches often receive strong reviews. The whiskey itself is frequently excellent. But you're paying craft prices for curation, not production. The actual distilling, aging, and barrel management that created the whiskey happened elsewhere. Barrel's contribution is choosing which barrels to buy and designing attractive packaging. Independent bottling is a legitimate business model in Scotland. Barrel adapted it for American whiskey. The model works. The question is whether skilled purchasing justifies craft bourbon prices when you're not actually crafting bourbon. Same MGP whiskey available under other labels. Premium markup for barrel selection and branding. Barrel curates purchased whiskey. The next brand created a gimmick to justify charging more for the exact same thing. Smoke Wagon, uncut, unfiltered, small batch, desert aged in Las Vegas, premium craft bourbon with Nevada attitude. Every drop comes from MGP. Smoke Wagon is a Nevada-based bottling operation that purchases MGP bourbon and sells it under Vegas branding. No distilling occurs. The company buys finished whiskey, bottles it, and markets it with desert imagery. The uncut, unfiltered positioning is genuine. Smoke Wagon bottles at cask strength without chill filtration. That's a legitimate quality indicator. The whiskey itself receives positive reviews. but the desert aging claims require scrutiny. Moving barrels from Indiana to Nevada for finishing doesn't transform bourbon. It adds logistics costs. Premium pricing reaches $60 to $80 for whiskey available under other MGP-sourced labels at lower prices. The Las Vegas branding works. The packaging appeals to a specific audience. The marketing is effective. The bourbon is MGP with a desert label. Smoke Wagon adds geography to sourced whiskey. The next brand represents everything wrong with craft bourbon pricing. Hudson Baby Bourbon. Toot Hilltown Spirits. New York's first whiskey distillery since Prohibition. Craft revolution born in the Hudson Valley. Farm-to-bottle innovation using New York grain. Small barrel aging for distinctive character you can't find anywhere else. Then you taste it. Everything collapses. Hudson Baby Bourbon is genuinely awful whiskey. Not overpriced, not misleading. Actually, objectively, aggressively terrible. Some of the worst bourbon available at any price point, according to independent reviewers who blind taste hundreds of whiskeys annually. Small barrel aging sounds innovative. The reality is cost-cutting disaster masquerading as craft technique. Standard bourbon barrels hold 53 gallons and require years for proper maturation. Hudson uses barrels as small as 3 gallons. Smaller barrels create wood contact faster. Bourbon extracts oak flavor in months instead of years. Production cycles accelerate dramatically. Bottles reach shelves while competitors are still aging inventory. But proper bourbon aging requires time for chemical transformation, not just wood contact. Fusel alcohols need years to oxidize and mellow into pleasant complexity. Harsh congeners need time to break down. Aggressive compounds need to transform through oxidation and evaporation. Small barrels create superficial wood flavor without allowing the chemistry that makes bourbon actually drinkable. You get oak tannins without maturation, wood sugars without integration, young alcohol burn without the mellowing that makes bourbon smooth. Hudson Baby Bourbon tastes approximately 18 months old because that's approximately how old it is. Aggressive, harsh, immature, chemically unfinished. Consumer reviews consistently describe the same experience. Solvent, nail polish remover, paint thinner, acetone. Chemical harshness that shouldn't exist in any whiskey calling itself premium. William Grant & Sons acquired Toot Hilltown in 2010. Scottish corporation ownership ended any legitimate craft claim over a decade ago. Marketing didn't acknowledge the change. Craft positioning continued unchanged. Prices stayed at $50 to $60 per bottle. For that same $60, you can buy bourbon aged 6 to 8 years from actual Kentucky distilleries with centuries of expertise. Hudson charges identical prices for whiskey aged less than 2 years that tastes like chemical assault. The small batch label means nothing legally. Any quantity qualifies. Small barrel aging means production shortcuts that sacrifice quality for speed. New York craft means Scottish corporate ownership extracting profit from American craft bourbon credibility. Independent reviewers at Whiskey Advocate, bourbon bloggers, and competition judges consistently rank Hudson among the worst whiskeys at any price point. Not just overpriced, genuinely unpleasant to drink. Open the bottle. The smell hits immediately. Solvent notes that shouldn't exist in properly aged whiskey. Aggressive raw alcohol that screams youth and immaturity. Pour a glass and approach carefully. The first sip delivers aggressive young alcohol burn that attacks your palate. Your mouth recoils. The finish leaves your tongue feeling damaged, with astringency lasting minutes. This is what $60 buys when marketing budgets replace maturation time. New York craft innovation marketed. Corporate-owned, underage disaster delivered. Premium pricing for liquid punishment disguised as artisan bourbon. Small batch, reserve, craft. These labels exist to justify prices, not guarantee quality. Before your next purchase, search the brand plus MGP. Check who actually owns it. Look for age statements. Your money deserves whiskey that matches its story. What bourbon have you been buying? Comments below.